All right, guys, welcome back. Oberter's doing well. We're talking a little bit about the Upper Potomac today. Obviously, there is was brought to my attention. There's some events coming up. Two events on the Upper Potomac in about a week or so. So I'm going to concentrate this video on the lower Piedmont section of my river, which is the Upper Potomac River. Okay, so I'm not going to get in above the Monocacy when we talk about the river because I don't any conflicts with tournaments coming up that are scheduled. There's the lower boundary is the Monocacy confluence with the Potomac River, and then these events go all the way up to the Dam 4. But I will preface this by saying that I really think, it's my personal opinion, I really think these events need to be amended and addressed in terms of their boundaries, because the river no longer fishes the way it fished a couple years ago. And there are many reasons for that. A lot of it is because now we have a little bit more grass coming back after the floods of 6 and 8 years ago. We've gotten a lot more grass in the lower Piedmont than we had in years past because it's coming back. Those floods basically decimated the grass lines from really Harper's Ferry all the way down to the lower Piedmont. That grass has come back, especially in the lower Piedmont. And really just because of what's happening, we've got some developments happening on the Upper Potomac that I don't think enough people are paying attention to. In terms of fish tag, in terms of smallmouth now being tagged, and we can actually track catch to catch. And we're finding that these smallmouth are moving 6, 8, 10, 12 miles within a season, meaning in the spring, in the summer, or in the fall. We're finding these smallmouth are moving. Some of these smallmouth have been caught upwards of 15 to 18 miles from catch to catch. So that tells us that the smallmouth bass are moving, right? And one of the things about the Upper Potomac is a very, very demanding fishery, okay? It is not the Susquehanna. I get into these debates all the time. The Upper Potomac really should not be in any discussion with the Susquehanna. The New River is the river in the Susquehanna, I believe, that are on par with a lot of things. But the Upper Potomac is a very, very hard fishery. Anglers struggle on the Upper Potomac, especially their first time, because this river does not set up like the Susquehanna or the Juniata or even the Allegheny, okay, or even the James River, okay, and to a lesser extent the Shenandoah. It sets up very, very different. Its terrain is different. Its topography is different. Its water confluences in terms of the influences are very, very different than a Susquehanna. You have to remember that along the lower Piedmont section, really below, you've got 1 million people who live there, okay? You've got all the storage drain runoff. You've got all that from all the developments from D.C. all the way up to Maryland, okay? And almost just really until it starts to thin out around Poolsville. And then it gets a little bit less populated, okay, as you go up the river. But that Montgomery County section of the lower Piedmont, has always been heavily influenced by runoff and things like that. But the fish have moved in there in the last couple years, and I can't go as far as to say that they're becoming resident fish, but we have seen a massive increase in the catch rates for everybody, and obviously in that 14, 15, and 16 range, that population density has recovered. Okay, that age juvenile smallmouth that survived the floods, okay, and is now 6 years old, 5, 6 years old since really the last major flood. And they're approaching 17 and 18 inches, right? Like, there is an abundance. And okay, what we're looking at here is this is just the lower Piedmont section for me since COVID, 2020, 6 years. So we're into the 6th year. We're in the middle of April right now, okay? These pins are all smallmouth 18 inches or more. And there's, I think there's 9 or 10 citations in there, okay? This is all the lower Piedmont, all right? And I say that because this is a section of the river that kayak tournaments do not schedule. Does not matter whether you're a Bass Nation event. Does not matter whether or not you're a USA Bassin event. Does not matter other events that have been scheduled on the Upper Potomac over the years. This area and the Lower Piedmont is never scheduled. The cutoff is typically either Point of Rocks, going north, going upriver, or in the case of events the last couple of years, has been up here at the Monocacy, the confluence with the Monocacy, okay, has been the lower boundary. So anglers could not fish downriver to Potomac, okay? And what you're going to find in the spring is that's a mistake. You can get away with fishing Harper's Ferry, Brunswick, Harper's Ferry, Point of Rocks, all the way up to Dam 4, all the way up to Slack, Williamsport, all the way upriver. You can go as far as Hancock or even Paw Paw. And in the summertime, okay, but in the spring, in April, the fish are not going to be located with significant population density in that area that in the summertime is one of the better areas, like around the Harper's Ferry to like Brunswick and Lander and Point of Rocks, okay? That is more of a summertime and a late fall because there is some deep water on the backside of those rocks across from Lander, going down to Point of Rocks, okay? But in the spring, the smallies are there less and less, and the size really isn't there. There, typically in the spring, it becomes when we come out of the yo-yo of high water, low water, of ice melt and snow melt from up north, and all that comes down, that area gets pounded. All the substrate gets turned up. It gets, because the topography is very, very different. It's very flatter, and so it allows that water to move stuff down. It disturbs everything. And that's what happens in spring, okay? We get heavy rains. That's what happens. Summertime, not so much, okay? And so that's where fish tag comes in, with showing us where the fish are moving to from spring to summer to fall. Okay, it's no longer guesswork. These are tagged fish being caught multiple times in different areas of the river during different times of the year. The Upper Potomac is a very, very finicky, very hard. And I say this, and I say this without disrespect. You catching 90 inches on the Susquehanna River or the Juniata River is nothing compared to you catching 90 inches on the Upper Potomac. If you catch 90 inches on the Upper Potomac, you've done something, okay? You done something, all right? Susquehanna, events up on the Susquehanna, go back and look at Hobie, go look back and look at Bassmaster, go back and look at the local Bass Nation trails and all the trails and everybody who fishes Susquehanna, the team trails. Virtually everybody in the field, 95% of the time, catches a limit, right? It's a Susquehanna. Massive population density of smallmouth within all areas. Although other than in certain areas of the river, it's been my experience that there are far more in that 15 to 17 range than there are in that 19 to 21 range. Sorry about that. And you've got to understand that is going, kind of plays into the mindset of people. Because the Upper Potomac is not the Susquehanna. It doesn't fish like the Susquehanna. It doesn't set up like the Susquehanna. And if you come with the mentality that you can do what you do on the Susquehanna and burn a chatterbait, okay, or throw the spinnerbait all day long, or even glide baits or big baits, and you bring that noise to the Upper Potomac, I mean, we're talking bagels, okay? We're talking, because you can skunk real easy. I fish this river 3-4 times a week, guys, okay, on average, the last 5-6 years, okay? It's very, very close to me, very, very close to the school when I've dropped my girls off, and I can go right to fishing right on the river. And I can tell you, there are days you can go 2-3 trips and only catch 1 or 2 smallmouth, and then you can hit, and when you hit, it's 90 inches. Okay, it's one of those places that's a highly pressured fishery, in large part because everybody looks to the tournaments to thinking that where the tournaments are scheduling events must be where the fish are. Well, it hasn't been that way for the last couple of years. And this map shows it. You see on the left-hand side, you can see this map that I've done on Google for me is where anything over 18 inches I plot. Okay, so I'm plotting 18s to 20 plus smallmouth, and this is the lower Piedmont section. Again, I've got this going all the way up to Hancock. Okay, all the way up to places that I've fished on my river in the last 6 years. Okay, but I'm primarily focusing on right here is the lower Piedmont, because this never gets scheduled. And if you look at it, it's got plenty of access. Okay, it's got plenty of water. It's got grass now. Okay, it's got ledges. It's got everything that you want. Okay, it's got everything that you want. All right, in terms of smallie chasing, right? And no tournaments ever get scheduled. Okay, and so a lot of people don't know about it. Okay, locals know about it. There are a lot of spots on this river that are sneaky, and you can't really apply a lot of the same tactics that you would apply on, say, a Susquehanna, or even at James River on the Upper Potomac. A lot of people come to the Upper Potomac and struggle because they want to power fish. It's not really a power fishing river system throughout the year. There are windows, of course, where it is, but for the most part, it is more of a finesse river system. If you look at this and we click on, let's say we'll just click on, look, because what I like to do is I like to actually just talk about like what I'm catching. Okay, let's click on this one right here. Jig, 19 inch with a jig. So that's how I plot it. Okay, how many inches it was and my bait. Okay, on any given time. Now, predominantly on this river system, it is jigs. It is Helgermites. It is drop shot. It is the Ned rig. It is these things. Then followed by that, when you're talking top water, you're going to be talking buzz bait. Buzz baits and spinner baits. But for me, the spinner baits are too big. But if you go with a top spin or a beetle spin, you are going to catch a lot of smallmouth. They like a smaller forage. The forage in the Upper Potomac is smaller than, say, the Susquehanna. So your bait profile needs to be smaller. You need to downsize your jig, okay, to a smaller jig, all right? Downsize your soft plastics. Very rarely do I go with anything bigger than a 3.3. And this last year, I was using a 3-inch Sakamata shad, crushing them, okay? Whereas most people would never throw a 3-inch Sakamata shad, right? It's more that's like a micro in the shad world, right? Of baits. Most people throw the 5-inch and the 6-inch Sakamata with a hover rig, right? But you can do that as a trailer. You could do that with a horizon head. You could do that with core tackle. You could do that with a hover, all that stuff you can use these baits for, and that's kind of like what I do. But you got to slow things down. From a hard bait standpoint, crankbaits especially, lipless are phenomenal. But not your heavier, bigger like Jackal T7, TN50s and 70s and all that. Your real thin lipless show out, okay, on the Upper Potomac. It's a lot more smaller bait profile they're used to seeing. For me, obviously, anyone who knows me knows I love the underspin year-round underspin. This happens to be, I had it out from the wintertime, black with chartreuse, okay? Underspins, crazy effective. Now, when I'm in the spring and I'm in the summer in this section, I am throwing in, most of these fish were caught on either an underspin or a jig, okay? And then Ned rig in third. But there's a natural forage color, right? As far as the Ned rig goes, all right? And then you follow that up, traditional style, ball head, Neds. One of the most popular things you could throw. Now, a lot of people don't have the patience for it, okay? They don't really, and this is what happens on the Upper Potomac that drives people crazy, okay? Is they don't really have the patience to roll with finesse, okay? And when you don't have that patience to roll with finesse, you're going to run into a lot of problems on the Upper Potomac. because you got to slow it down, and you have to dial in and pick apart areas. Power fishermen struggle. You can go up to the dam and power fish, don't get me wrong, but for the most part of the river system, power guys struggle. Those guys that only want to burn a chatterbait and only want to throw a big spinnerbait, they can struggle on the upper Potomac, because the upper Potomac smallmouth, unlike the Susquehanna smallmouth, don't want to chase as much. I believe the Susquehanna smallmouth chase more because it's competitive. Food is competitive for them because there's such an abundance of population density of smallmouth, okay? The upper Potomac, the smallmouth are spread out, okay? They are currently spread out in the river right now. They're not in one area or one section. They are spread out. We are in low-level conditions. Mornings have been in the 40s, sometimes in the 30s. The afternoons have been in the 60s, as high as the mid-80s 2 weeks ago. And then we've yo-yoed back and forth. And so they're basically spread out. But if you look at this map here, you're going to see a lot of the smallies that I've caught that are 18 or up are coming middle river, not on the bank. A lot of people go and pound the bank. The problem with that on the upper Potomac near the C&O Canal is that has an abundance of fishing pressure. If you're going to fish the bank, you want to fish that bank in stretches where the C&O Canal is not right on the river, okay? A lot of that more is upriver, up towards above Point of Rocks, Brunswick to Harper's Ferry on the Maryland side. There's a lot more areas, heavy vegetation on the shoreline that prevents a lot of bank fishing. And so that's why. And on the Virginia side, you've got a lot of grass. The Maryland side is 95% rock substrate along the bank. The Virginia side has a considerable amount of grass now, okay? And so that opens up a lot of possibilities, right? Backsliding a tube, successful. One of the best presentations you can present in the lower Piedmont, okay, of the upper Potomac, is a small tube. Another one, if you like the chatter bait, okay, look, there's a couple fish on here that have been caught, obviously, with a baby jack and a jackhammer. That's probably one of the top rated baits, right? But you want to go micro. You want to go smaller. Or smaller, okay, is what you want to do, all right? And then add a little soft plastic, expand the profile, or go smaller, a 2.5, something. We want to keep that profile small and compact for the upper Potomac, okay? But effectively, I can tell you right now, hands down, if you talk to anybody locals are throwing, what I come, jig spinners. That's what locals are throwing and catching fish on. Jig spinners. This is simply a Ned rig, okay, format, no different than this format with a spinner, okay, for that flash. All right? And so you can use any kind of soft plastic that you prefer. You can use a swim impact. I've done that. You can use any of those with this, and just you're adding a spinner, okay, to what would inevitably be an Ned rig, okay, which is nothing more than an extension of probably the number one bait of our youth, at least most people's youth, that grew up where I grew up, and it still catches massive fish today, including citation smallmouth, is the beetle spin. It's the beetle spin. So you can buy these Johnson beetle spins and just switch out, cut your soft plastics down, okay, whatever size they are, cut it down closer to the tail and swap it out. But it's simply the beetle spin. I can tell you, you cannot go wrong with throwing something as simple as a beetle spin on the upper Potomac. It's the right profile, forage size, has the flash, okay, and they're easy meals for them, okay? But, when you're going for that bigger bite, you would think you need to go a bigger bait, but you don't. These 20s, like I caught this 20 down here near, I believe that's Swain's, with an adduster crawl on a very, very similar jig head, an adduster crawl, okay? Awesome crawl imitator bait. I mean, I predominantly have caught more fish on the lower on the Piedmont with the duster crawl and the dew live beaver, okay, from OSP, a smaller dew live beaver. Free rigging it or tubes, backsliding tubes, for example. And let me grab that. Let me grab the tubes really quick. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with the tubes. Hellgrammites. Hellgrammites are another absolute. You cannot come to the Upper Potomac without bringing Hellgrammites. Okay, you're gonna need the Hellgrammite. They love the Hellgrammite on the bottom. Okay, take out all these Hellgrammites. Get these out the way. Because I'm gonna pull out these tubes for you. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. And you can pick the tubes that you like, you know, the setups that you like, that you prefer. You know, like all the other baits that we got, you know, you pretty much, you know, it's just whatever your poison is. I really like these secret lures. I really like these tubes. I like Snaggler Tackles lures. I like Muddy Water lures from up in PA. Why not? I mean, these guys know what the Susquehanna tube fishing's all about. Those are probably my bigger ones, bigger players. Open this up. I'll show you one of my favorite tubes right here. Patterns. It's just this crawl pattern for the Upper Potomac. Smaller tube. Again, keep that profile small and compact. Okay. And that's actually from Jake's. That color's from Jake's Lure Joint. If you can actually pick those up, you'll be good to go. Secret lures, they're pretty much standard, but I can rotate them between Snaggler Tackle. I've also caught, and I'm using stupid tubes, jig heads. Stupid tube jig heads are what I found. Really, really love these. 3/16. These are the 3/16. I also have them in some other sizes, but I really like to throw the tube on a tube head, what I would call a tube head jig head, as opposed to what I would throw, a Ned rig, a ball head jig. Some guys will use the ball head with a tube and it works. It works. I just feel like I like to do this, especially if I'm backsliding. I really, really like that. If you're not familiar with that, you can check out the smallmoutharmy.substack.com. I'll put the link in this video. I break in a lot. The masterclass for finesse fishing. It's pretty much based mostly on the Shenandoah, the Upper Potomac, and the Susquehanna, because those are the three rivers that I fish the most. In terms of that go. I don't know if I have it. Let me see if I have it. I do. So one of the other awesome custom baits that absolutely crushes it on both the Upper Potomac and the Susquehanna, because I really don't think they're seeing this particular soft plastic that much. It's from J-Bros, and it is it's like a double trouble. So I don't know if you can see that, but it's basically a split tail, cylinder shaped. Fish it just like a tube. You can fish it like a tube. You can fish it on the jig head. You can fish it like a Ned. Drop shot. I've drop shot. Another great presentation for the Upper Potomac. Now let's talk a little bit about why I'm saying that these boundaries need to be adjusted. And the reason why these boundaries need to be adjusted is you have to be open to the fact that the river levels constantly are changing, okay? And it fluctuates so much. Right now it's below 2 feet, okay? And it's probably going to be the same level or lower come tournament time for these guys. But there's always deep water. And the deep water in the Piedmont is below the Monocacy confluence. Edwards Ferry area, all the way down, Algonquin, where this really is, okay? All right, so you got the Blockhouse Point. You're going to come up. There's a dam right here, Old Dam. It's the remnants called Old Dam 2 at Violet's Lock, okay? You can see all the pins, right? I mean, that's deep water. What do you mean by deep water? That's 5 feet of water when the river is at 1.5 feet. Because the topography of the wall of the substrate drops like an impression before you get to that dam. So if you're at that dam and you're wade fishing on the top of that dam, you can see impressions where the water is like 1.5 feet, then 4, then a foot and a half, then 3. Okay? And you've got to understand that that is what's going to happen. Okay? And that's perfect for throwing it in there, leaving it in there, let it sit on the bottom, and then kind of pop it off the bottom. Algonquin is right here, Trump National Park. Can't miss that with the big old American flag. I usually launch at a Seneca Landing right here when I want to go fish deep water. It's much deeper water from here all the way up to Edwards Ferry than it is from Point of Rocks to Harper's Ferry. Okay? And so when the water is at like a foot and a half or 2 feet on the gauges, I go fishing in this section. Okay? Because I can go right out. And I've seen guys all the time, and some guys that fish NVKBA, some guys that fish, used to fish the old bronzeback bassin series of. They would launch right out of Algonquin or Seneca and run their motors and motor on all the way upriver and get on them. Okay? And so that's really, really what it is. And I think the tournaments if they really want these tournaments to really like blow out, they got to include the lower Piedmont now, because this is where the fish are. Okay? There are fish up there, and in the summertime, I'll be going to Harper's Ferry. I'll launch at Harper's Ferry, fish around the bridge, go on the far side, go down to Brunswick. I know what's going to happen at the tournaments is predominantly a lot of the guys are going to launch, unfortunately, and attempt to fish in the areas that are summer areas, not spring areas, because they probably don't have as much experience on the river, okay, to know that. And they've got deeper water above Dam 4 that they can't fish. And then they've got deeper water below Monocacy that they can't fish, right? So it kind of pigeonholes these guys into running the buzzbait, running the top. It does. If you want to power, it pigeonholes you. It doesn't really give you that many options, because burning that chatterbait's not going to work for you, consistently when the water is 2 feet or less. And they're not kind of up on the bank or into the bank. They're more the middle river, and you got to kind of do, and they're, like I said, they're not as curious, and they're not going to chase something down and exert that kind of energy, because while the aromatic temperatures are in the low 40s, the river is still been fluctuating in the 50s, right? And then getting up at certain times and then coming down, and they're still in that mode, right? Some of them may have already spawned, right? And so there's that aspect, but others are still in pre-spawn. It really depends on what section of the river that you're in. But this is just a baseline. You can always reach out to me, email me. I'm more than happy to share this or share everything, share the baits, share the stuff. I really want to get people on. I really believe in the campaign that's kind of a national campaign in terms of every river needs a champion. I want to champion the Upper Potomac, because I think there's a lot of areas in the Upper Potomac that people are sleeping on because they're paying attention too much to tournaments, okay? And they shouldn't do that. There's areas where these fish are moving into that are not being covered by the tournaments. And so when you see a tournament come in on the Upper Potomac and somebody wins the Upper Potomac with 78 inches or 82 inches, everybody thinks, oh, that's a bad tournament. Well, they're not fishing a lot of the areas, especially way, way upriver. Like you're talking Hancock to Paw Paw is like biggins. And people don't really schedule that as much as they schedule the known like areas of, across the state. So just keep that in mind, with how you want to look at it and approach it. And you'll be able to do what needs to be done in terms of catching those fish this spring and in this summer. So hope everybody enjoyed this. Please like and subscribe to the channel.